morning, everyone. For those of you I don't know, I'm Erin, and this is Badri, my dear friend. We get to share service together, and I've brought some other friends from the village, Sundara and Kebala, and we'll be sharing some more after service as well. But I wanted to start with a whisper from eternity. This is number 41. Wake me that I may know that the terrors of mundane delusion are only dreams. Wrapped in the blanket of hope, I slept long. I dreamed I was sitting on a throne, my face wreathed in smiles. My smiles withered, and the petals of my merriment dropped away one by one. Suddenly, I beheld myself in rags. Seated on the hard stones of poverty, I wept, and my teardrops fell on the unheeding, unrelenting stones of my present circumstances. The world passed me by in mocking silence. I cried out for thy help, and thou didst wake me at last through the force of my desperation. I laughed to find myself at last neither rich nor poor, but safe forever in thy arms. Oh, waken all anxious souls from their dreams of smiling opulence and crying poverty. O maker of dream worlds, deliver me forever from the nightmares of disease and death. Wake me to immortality. Wake me to unshaken calmness, that I may know the fierce terrors of mundane delusion to be only dreams. That unshaken calmness is really what intuition is, in a sense. It's that calm feeling that allows us to face every circumstance, every situation at its highest level. I love the line Swami Kriyananda says, Peter understood and answered the question that Jesus was asking on its intended level, the spiritual. And I've been thinking about that because I think God and Guru are really asking us to answer everything that comes to us in life, answer every challenge, every problem on its intended level, which is not the level of reason, it's not the level of the ego, but this level of superconsciousness, this level of intuition, the level of the spirit, of the soul, to see with the eyes of the soul everything that comes to us. And of course, reason is necessary. We can't have just one and not the other. But reason only takes us so far. It's limited. I think any of us who have maybe tried to understand this world, our lives in this world, what's happening to us solely through the faculty of reason, have quickly, maybe, slowly, eventually realized it doesn't work. It doesn't work. There's always a limit to how far reason can take us. And we realize that there's another way of knowing and understanding what's happening to us, what's happening around us, what's happening to the people we see in our lives. And it's this faculty, this ability, this intuition that allows us to understand on the deepest level, on the level that God intended, and to be able to navigate what happens to us in life. Nevertheless, it's easy to get caught falling back into the habit of relating from that level of reason. It's everywhere. That's how most people in the world are relating. And I appreciate what Swami says, that if we are relying primarily on reason, it leads to confusion. It leads to being overwhelmed, not being able to understand. And yet, if we rely on intuition, it leads to clarity. It leads to that sense of inner certainty where we can stand unshaken. And I was thinking it might be helpful to share some examples of relying more on intuition than reason, because there's so many examples of relying on reason and how that works out, that maybe we could use some inspiration on the other side of relying more on our intuition so that we can start to and continue to develop that in ourselves as a way to relate. So there's a beautiful story from Yogananda's childhood. Swami Kriyananda wrote a book of stories called Stories of Mukunda, all stories from Yogananda's childhood. And this one chapter, he's talking about how much Yogananda loved to meditate, even as a child, and he would find all these interesting places to meditate, and meditating long hours, practicing Hong Sa for 6 hours, And this one day, though, he had been cooking and cleaning and serving meals to the poor, and he came home and just collapsed into bed, completely exhausted. And he just thought to himself, just this once, I'm not going to meditate. I've been serving God all day. Surely that's enough. I don't know if anyone else has ever had that thought. I think it's somewhat relatable, perhaps. And yet, because he had this habit of meditation, there was this little thought that came, this voice that said, but you've never slipped like this before. And of course, though, his reasoning mind, I'm exhausted, I've been serving Divine Mother all day, surely she would want me to rest. And yet again, that voice of the soul, that voice of intuition, speaking to him from his experience of meditation, don't you want to offer all your aches and pains to Divine Mother? Don't you long for Divine Mother anymore? And then he hears this voice, so sweetly, so sympathetic, poor boy, he's so tired, let him sleep. And suddenly, Yogananda realizes he's not been listening to the right voice. He realizes that is not the voice of Divine Mother that's speaking to him so sweetly. And he sits up in lotus posture and he starts to meditate 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. And his body's complaining, oh, surely this is enough. Surely this is enough. But from that place of intuition, that soul voice affirms, I will not sleep until I have felt the presence of Divine Mother. And instantly, her joy, her bliss overwhelms him, fills him with light, and he stays awake the whole night in that bliss, feeling more refreshed than he ever would have from resting. And so our reason doesn't always tell us the whole story, does it? It gives us, it's the intuition that helps us to feel that true joy. Our reason says, well, maybe this, and you need to rest, or whatever it is. And yet, the intuition is what awakens us to that true joy and guides us to that true joy. But it's because he had that habit of meditation that he was able to hear that voice. That's an important part of that story as well, because we need stillness, we need meditation in order to awaken that intuition, in order to awaken that ability to see life, to relate to life on that level of intuition. Swami Kriyananda said, restlessness is the playground of Maya, the playground of delusion. Restlessness is the playground of delusion. And what did Master say? Stillness is the altar of spirit. So what are we feeding in our lives through our activities? Are we constantly restless, constantly outwardly relating through the senses, through our reactions, through our habits? Or are we practicing relating more from that place of stillness? We have to practice that and find that inner calmness, that inner stillness that we can bring then into all of our activities. Because it's not, relating spiritually is not about pulling back or not involving ourselves or not participating or not being active. It's being calmly active. It's being active and engaging and relating from our own center, And we have to, through meditation, through these practices that we've been given by these masters, find that center in meditation, in our daily practice, and then bring that into everything that we do. And when we do, we're able to relate and see more clearly. That's the thing, when we're always restless, we're not really seeing, when we're relating on that level of reason and, well, what about this and what if that and yeah, but this, that's the conscious mind. Nothing's ever clear. We're never really seeing the whole picture. And yet when we can relate on that deeper level of the soul, everything's clear. I think anyone who's meditated even a little bit has maybe had some experience of that, of being able to see things more clearly, being able to maybe solve problems that seemed insolvable. I don't know if anyone's ever done that before. You're facing something, you go and meditate, you get up, and it's either it's not a problem anymore because you've just changed your consciousness, or you realize, oh, there is a solution. There is a solution in every problem, innate to every problem. But it's only through our intuition that we're able to realize that. There's a story from Rajarsi Janakananda, who was Yogananda's foremost disciple. And he was a very successful businessman. But he would meditate all morning and come only in the afternoons to work. And someone said to him, with all your responsibilities, how can you afford to come in the afternoon and not be here in the morning? How can you do that? How can you get anything done? And he said, with all my responsibilities, I can't afford not to. I can't afford not to. That's a good reminder for all of us that how are we going to solve all the problems that we have? Not by constantly being engaged and busy and restless. We have to take that time to find our center. And he said that he was able to solve problems easily that others would spend weeks on trying to figure out, because they're working on that level of the conscious mind versus that level of intuition. I have been blessed to live and serve at Ananda Village in California, and especially blessed to work with so many longtime members of Ananda. And it's really a constant reminder of the power of meditation and of these practices and of living these teachings and how to really live them in everything we do, even the day-to-day things. I get to work with Latika. Some of you know Latika and Atman, who has been our village manager for many years. And Latika is our chief financial officer. That's her official title, but kind of behind the scenes. Maybe some of you haven't met her because she's not up here on the dais as a minister in that way, and yet she is a minister and light bearer. Very behind the scenes, working very much with the material plane, things that the legal aspects of the organization and the financial and all of that. And I'm in the fundraising department, so she and I connect and meet and are part of different meetings and things like that. And there's often challenging things that we have to figure out that seem difficult and overwhelming to me, at least. And many times I'll go to her and say, well, what about this? What are we going to do? And we have to do this, and what if this? And it's amazing because every time, I've never yet been able to get the response that little self wants, which is, oh, you're right, it's so hard. She never has that response. It's always just this perfect calmness, this perfect even-mindedness, just to face everything from that place of centeredness, and also from her own experience of seeing it always works out, and it doesn't work out because we spent all this time trying to figure it out. That's what I'm noticing about these people that I'm working with is they're not spinning their wheels a lot, trying to figure it out. There's this calmness. They're putting out energy, but it's always from this place of centeredness. And it always does work out. It's just amazing to see. And so it just reminds me, maybe I don't need to listen to that voice that's telling me, oh, what about this and what if that? And so just an invitation for all of us to pay attention to that voice that tries to catch us and listen more to that voice that speaks to you in meditation or right after you come out of meditation. That's the level that God intends us to relate to what's happening to us. And, there's many examples in our community of people facing very difficult tests with so much grace and so much joy. I had a friend recently who her mother had to move and ended up having to move into assisted living, which was unexpected, and that was a big transition, moving out of state and going through all of that. And as soon as that happened, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, went through all of that intense treatment, multiple chemotherapy, radiation, the whole thing. She's totally fine now. And then immediately after her last radiation, her mother got sick. She had to go up, and her mother passed and deal with all of that. And it was just like one tidal wave after another, every bit of that, every step of the way. And I was sharing with her, we're close friends, and I was just sharing with her about some little wavelet that I was dealing with. And she was just saying, I realized that when these waves come, I have to get up on top of the wave. Otherwise, there's no way through. I have to raise my energy and get up on top of the wave and meet it at that level. And, I was remarking to her at one point just how positive her energy was, like how much, positivity in relating to everything, how much joy I was feeling in sharing with her and connecting with her through this whole experience. And she said, I can't afford to be negative. I can't afford to be negative. And really none of us can, but we kind of fall into that and we let ourselves because we think, oh, well, poor me, whatever. We get caught. But really none of us can afford to be negative because it draws our energy down and it doesn't allow us to see life as God intended. It doesn't allow us to really relate to life as it really is. And it doesn't allow us to see ourselves as we really are. That's the most powerful thing of that whole experience, is seeing my friend just blossom into a deeper expression of who she really is through all of those trials, but more than through the trials, through the way that she responded to them, to the way that she related to them with energy, with willingness, with joy. And we all have that opportunity with whatever we're facing to respond, to relate on that higher level. And it takes energy, certainly. It takes energy and it takes practice. So we have to be gentle with ourselves as we're learning to do that and practicing. Swami Kriyananda is another amazing, I think, example for all of us in this community at the village and here. I see so many examples here of people facing their tests with so much joy, with so much grace, with so much energy, with so much willingness. And Swami Kriyananda had many, many health challenges in his life and traveled also a lot to our various communities, Italy and India. And Nayaswami Devi was telling this story recently during Inner Renewal Retreat, if anybody tuned in. She was talking about how whenever he would go to the doctor, he had this stack of a file, basically, of all his medical conditions and history, and all of that was thick. And so, he'd inevitably give that to the doctor, and the doctor would say, "How are you, sir?" And he would always respond, "Excellent," with just absolute authenticity. Because, why? He wasn't relating on the level of the body. He wasn't relating on the level of the little self. He was relating to what was happening on the level of the soul. And the soul is excellent. The soul is divine joy every moment. There's no conditions on that joy, on that soul level. And so we always have that choice. How are we going to relate? How are we going to respond? I've been experimenting a little bit whenever someone asks me, because a lot of times, you see people and how are you? That's just generally the first question people ask. So I've gotten into the habit of automatically, just without thinking, excellent, always saying, I'm excellent. And it's kind of funny because a lot of people are like, oh, really? I don't know why, but because, what can happen is someone asks, how are you? And you go into your reasoning mind, right? How, well, this happened, and I don't know about this, and, right? We get caught. But if we just, I'm training myself, right, to just respond, excellent. Not go into that thinking about it mode, right? Well, let's see, how am I? How's my body? How do I feel? How do I like what's happening to me? No, don't go there. Excellent. And what it's doing for me is it's reminding me what level I want to relate on. Even if I'm not feeling excellent, maybe I'm not even really feeling like I'm able to be totally 100% relating on that soul level. I know it's there. I know because of my meditation practice that there is a part of me that is always excellent. There is a part of me that's unchanged by what's happening. And so every time I respond, it reminds me, oh, yes, that's how I want to be relating. That's the level I want to relate at. Swami Kriyananda said, it's not insincere to say you're happy if you're determined to make it true and live in that consciousness. That's been really helpful for me, because there's this desire sometimes to be real, and it's like, okay, but let's be really real. Let's be soul level real, That's the level we want to live at. It's not insincere. If that's the consciousness that you want to live in, then affirm that until you get there, until you are that, until you feel that on every level. And you will get there. I'm feeling it in my own self, bit by bit. We're making progress, so just keep at it. Just keep affirming that, keep practicing that. The other thing I've noticed is that sometimes it can be easier to be, solution-oriented with other people's problems. I was noticing this the other day, because I was kind of getting ready for this trip, and there's just a lot to do, and so I was kind of all caught in that. And then I was talking, I bumped into someone else in the office, and she was sharing about all these, and I was like, oh no, you can do this, it's great. And I just it was so easy to be positive, you can totally do this. It's easy. Not that it's easy, but just that I could see the possibility, the potential, and the positive potential there. And so I was sharing with a friend of mine, why is it so easy, when it's other people's problems, to be positive and to relate on that level, that higher level, to see it, but when it's my problems, it's so hard. And wisely, this person said, maybe you should get rid of the thought of my. And that's really what the reasoning mind, the ego, does. It relates everything back to the little self. I, my, me, mine, yeah. It relates everything back to that little self. And where does that get us? We just keep contracting, and we don't see solutions, and we feel overwhelmed, we feel confused, we feel cut off. And what the invitation is in this reading is to relate everything back to God, to relate everything back on that highest level. And the saints and the masters give us so many beautiful examples of how to do that, and the joy that comes when we relate everything back to God and not to this little self. There's a beautiful story of St. Francis, who, when he first renounced everything and was going around and begging for food, and people really didn't understand what he was doing, and all he got was, rotten food and scraps, and so he had this bowl, and this was his meal. And he was at first a little repulsed, and yet he looked at it and he said, "This is wonderful. God gave it to me. This is wonderful. God gave it to me." take that into every circumstance of our lives. Whatever God is giving to us, whatever is coming to us, it's from the divine. It's for our spiritual evolution. It's for our growth. It's for our highest good. And God does not want us to relate on that level of reason, of ego. He wants us to relate on that highest level, to relate everything back to him, to that divine joy. In the autobiography of a yogi, it says, it's one of the last pages, Yogananda says, God is love. His plan for creation can be rooted only in love. Every saint who has penetrated to the core of reality has testified that a divine universal plan exists and that it is beautiful and full of joy. It is beautiful and full of joy. So when we perfect our ability to relate to life on that soul level, we'll be able to see that beauty, that joy. As long as we're caught in reason, it's very hard to see. Things do not seem beautiful and joyful. But remember, that's not the reality. That's how we're relating to it. And the more we can remind ourselves through our meditation, practicing stillness, practicing our willingness, our gratitude to relate to everything that comes to us as coming from the divine, we'll see and feel and experience and be a part, and we already are a part of that divine plan, which is beautiful and full of joy.